Hello, my darling. How are you doing?
Hello, my darling. How are you doing? I'm super. I'm phenomenal right now.
You stole my thunder. I wanted to say phenomenal, so I'm fantastic then. Uh, I,
Nice.
I'm very excited because today we're gonna talk about like a burning topic that we heard from like our
Yes.
followers, our listeners, and we touched upon on with Matteo during our interview. And if you haven't seen it, take a look because it was very interesting. But the
Absolutely.
topic today is all about the recipe for the modern designer.
Boom. That's it. Looks like a secret recipe or my grandmother recipe for something, but we were trying to discover together some feats and quotes about what would we can define a modern designer now, a designer in 2020, a designer post-COVID, what designer, how we can define a modern designer right now.
That's a very tricky question, especially coming
Mm.
from the fact that, and I've been working with a number of fairly large companies. The role of
Mm-hmm.
design in general, especially when you talk about like digital design and how it combines with industrial design, it really depends what kind of product or service you're creating. But when it comes to digital design, it's still pretty tricky because it's still like a kind of a new role, and the role has been expanding and it's changing so fast that even all the different nuances and the skill are so tricky. So you keep hearing about, okay, what is UX, what is user experience, what is user interface, what is like a content strategy, what is visual design,
Mm.
what is graphic
Mm.
design, and then there is a bunch of other areas that people are shifting and learning, and you got a combination of specialists versus hybrids. That's why it's so tricky, not only for a person to learn the best way to be a designer, but even for a
Mm.
company, I would say, to understand, okay,
So, all
who should be in my design team.
right. What skills do I really need?
Also,
Kind of.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I. It was interesting. Like one of my recent like engagement was literally working on that for a big
Mm.
retail company, and literally they were asking, "Do you believe that we have the right design skill set in place? Our people are good enough in digital design. How can we support them to make them better?" Because
Mm.
a retail company create physical product, but digital is as important as ever today. So you might have anything right now as a digital counterpart, right? A digital twin.
Mm-hmm.
So you no
Mm-hmm.
longer need those product designer. You either need the product designer to understand digital, or you need a digital
Mm.
designer, so UX and UI expert, that can expand the experience of the object into the digital world. And it was very fascinating.
Tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is, it is, it is. I would say it's not just about the type of work you're looking for, because it should start from you. I mean, there are a bunch of roles, bunch of skills. I posted this article today about the circle of competencies that in a way I think could fit well what you are saying. We are trying to define what is the new designer, the modern designer role. You should not, I don't think you should be able, because you can be mastering everything in design. There are many rules, many types of expertise. My point in the circle of competencies is understand what you are really good at, stick with it, and keep focus on your limits.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I agree because we've been saying that you have your vocation, and that's pretty much what makes you unique. And you cannot force to be something else. You can learn new skills, but if there's something that you're not really talented at, it's not that you can fake it, right? And then talent is something that, especially on creative spaces, works
Yes.
so well, and some people are just magic about creating some output that you can't really make them transform into something completely different. So I agree with you. You have your competence. I trust that, and it's also been like thread for my whole career. Like I know what I wanted to do. I know what gets me excited. I know how human-centered design is something that really gets me on going every day. I know there were a lot of things that I don't really like that much, that I know that are part of my job, but it's not what is driving me, and it's not my main competence. So totally agree with that. Competence is key.
I would say don't skip nothing in advance. Be aware of limits. Even because you can be the strongest designer in just one little thing and provide a solid skill to your team, because you can guarantee to them that, oh, you are good at that. But at the same time, I would point to because I'm still learning from my mistake. Don't just underestimate learnings, because your interest could be very broad. You can have a very multi-potential talent, but don't suppose to be a software engineer, to have a software engineer skills in like 2 weeks if you are a designer, kind of. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
It's about limits, it's about the value you can add, but most of all, most important probably, it's the value that your team and your work environment could agree with what you are doing. That is not just in your head, oh, I'm a great interaction designer or something, but it's something that it's valuable inside your workspace.
I believe that what we want to do today to guide this conversation and even see the reaction from the people that are listening will be, we've been doing some homework, some research to understand, I mean, what's design out there, right? And we've been finding and reading an article on LinkedIn that is pretty phenomenal about something that is called the UX umbrella, and pretty much covers a lot of different skills. We'll be sharing that like here with you on the YouTube or on the Medium article that we'll be creating. It's a combination of different pillars of design that are interesting in understanding what is the arsenal of a designer, right? You don't need to have all of them. You might just have a few, but it gives you an idea of the breadth of design today. So let's just mention some of them and discuss what they entail, just to give an understanding of what design means today. One of the dimensions, the first one is what they call the UX strategy. When you really focus on the objectives, clarification, you all about the planning, the prioritization, and the measurement. Yeah. The other one is the user research. When you go in and you meet with your customer or your prospect and try to understand and create empathy, and you get those insight out of them to guide your understanding phase or your testing phase. There is the business analyst that is more focused about the numbers, maybe I have a deep product knowledge, brings the voice of the business, and that's very important. I think you had in your Italian podcast you interviewed I think it was Valeria that talk about the importance of having business strategy always in mind, because it's not always about the customer, but the business is as important as understanding the customer.
Yeah, really true.
And then there is this new role called the information architect that is getting more and more important. We're getting a little bit close to tech, but information architecture is very important because that's where you take care of all the taxonomies, the categories, the labels, and everything that you create has to be organized, because if it's not, it's just chaos. That's how we'll describe this role. There are 5 more. One of them,
absolutely,
it's more into the classic, what you call the classic creative skills. That is the interaction designer. So you understand all the wireframes, the mock-up, the storyboarding, you got that mental modeling, and that's how you craft all these things.
I would say that interaction designer is the new graphic designer, but the new graphic designer is not the new UX designer, it's just the new interaction designer. Does it make sense? It's one on nine. If you are a graphic design, I think that it's just focused at the new one in interaction. Go further.
No, yeah, and it's very intertwined with the visual designer. That is more about, the iconography, the typography, the color, the font, that kind of spacing, the white space, that is very important. Yeah, I would say those two are probably what people will call UX and UI today. If you think, can you do some UX UI? An interaction designer and a visual designer are the UX UI expert. And there is another dimension of that you talk about that with Valentina again in your podcast. That is the
Valentina.
UX writer or content strategist that works on all the copywriting, right? That is phenomenal. Very, very important.
So really underrated and really, really, really important. Nowadays, we really need content strategists because at the end, if you want that technology have to return to people, we need a powerful text, powerful content. It's not just about tech itself. It's about a good message, a clear statement that can help your product or your experience to reach people with test first.
And what we've seen more and more, that is a few of the last two dimensions, is the front-end developer. That's also the part of the software engineer where many designers are looking at, like, is this the future? So a front-end developer really transformed the design into code, and all the modern tools are going to the facilitation of this task, but it's still something that is very different, right?
To bridging the gap.
And I believe the last but not least, it's the aspect of program manager or project manager, whatever you prefer to call it. But it's those people that literally enables the agile mentality. Because nowadays, especially if you go in a big company, everything has to be agile. So there is a combination of, call it Scrum, Safe, and how you interact with the different people in your product team and how you make things happen. That's also a great skill to have still as a designer. So that's a lot. It's 9 of those. Do you feel the headache already?
Do you feel
the headache?
Yeah. It's something that we decided to talk with our friends in the community because it's really important to understand that. Even if at the beginning it could be scary. I mean, should I learn this? Should I learn that? But think like this. I would like to say this little. I would like to point this aspect. If you don't know your skill, you can't pretend that your agency or your corporate or whatever you were working on will do that for you. So start from being aware of what are your ingredients for your perfect recipe, and then become I would say, your own modern designer of yourself.
I agree.
Right?
I was thinking about this. If you think, let's say that this 9 dimension, and we will share like a visual, so it's easier for everyone to follow. But this 9 dimension is almost like the ingredients for a perfect recipe, the one that you have to customize for who you are. And it's almost like you have definitely like a major and a minor that is more the US education system. Like you really excel in some of them, and you are maybe okay in a few of them as well. So you need to have a combination of those. But there is no one specific way to call it out to define how good of a designer you are.
Right.
And there is another aspect that I think might be helpful when you're looking at those 9 pillars. When you're looking for a job, for example, you want to make sure that you find which kind of roles are actually looking for those 9 pillars. Because if you look, for example, at something that is super trendy right now, and it's a product manager. A product manager is a lot of a UX strategist, is a lot of a product researcher, is a lot of a PM, and is way less of a visual designer. So your major will be in those 3. But if you look, for example, at a creative needs to excel in the visual and the interaction, because those are the key skills. Of course, if a creative can have a minor in content strategy, so you're really good at UX writing too, it's a plus. Yes. But it's how you combine those 9 that also creates a sort of a role when you try to look for a job. What do you think? Like in your experience, does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes completely sense. And in my experience, for example, at the beginning I was super interested like in everything, but there were a moment I realized actually that I need to invest in my competencies that are a mix between what I love and what I want to grow in with, so that I can invest most of my time that is valuable for me. Because as you told, I could be like, for example, very I will not be a good front-end developer, right? This will not say that I'm not going to understand something, but the time and the effort that I will put on that will cost me more and more than focusing on what I love to do.
Totally. I would say to wrap up is a point that we mentioned even during our work-life balance episode. It's all about self-awareness. If you don't understand what are the possible skills of a modern designer, it's very hard to become.
The paths in front of you are larger than Google Maps streets, right? I would say like that. Are really large. So if you don't turn on your LiDAR,
you will never find your path. So you need something to turn on the light. Definitely. I will just say that what we can do for you is, as we share these 9 pillars, tell us what you think, and tell us what you think. Tell us what you think is your math, your spider graph, and what you think the best recipe for a designer is. Will be very interesting to know.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to prepare the kind of this map, to print it out and to post it in my room, because I think it will be useful for me. No, it's true.
Yes.
It's true.
With credit to the UX umbrella, we'll improve the UX umbrella.
We'll share that.
It's gonna come your way soon, guys. Thank you, Raffaele. I'll see you next time.
Federico, it's been a pleasure.
Ciao. Bello.